Good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Trabert, and I drew the short straw. I have to follow Pastor Moore. Seriously, we really are pleased to be and honored to be working with Pastor Moore. You know, both of our organizations are working on what we think might be one of the greatest challenges facing our state and indeed our nation. And that's the fact that we have low education attainment and achievement overall, and especially for low-income kids. It's not because they can't learn. It's because they haven't been given the equal opportunity to learn. Thank you. Having the opportunity to get a good education is key to being able to be successful in life and to move on through college. And it's not just for students, it's about communities as well. In fact, there's very strong economic research that links the economic vitality of a community with education attainment. And let me just give you a short perspective on what that means, especially for those of us here in Wichita. The adults 25 plus who have attained a bachelor's degree or higher here in Sedgwick County, it's 29%. Johnson County, it's 52%. In Travis County, which is Austin, Texas, it's 45%. In Denver County, city of Denver, it's 43%. Doing well in college is key to the economic vitality of individuals and communities. And that means you have to start with a very good base education in K-12. Now, we're all told that Kansas has some of the best achievement in the nation, that we have some of the highest rankings out there. And it would be great if that were true. But the folks telling you that know that it's not. The education community and the media know that, honestly, Kansas is about average overall in a nation that really doesn't do that well. That's the honest to goodness truth. I'll give you an example. The ACT test that was just taken found that the Kansas high school graduates, only 32% of them are college ready in English, reading, math, and science. 32%. Now, some people say that's great because we beat the national average of only 30%. We can't take any solace in that. That's unacceptable. Those achievement, and there are great achievement gaps. 32% was the average. 37% for white students, 15% for Hispanic students in Kansas, and only 8% for African Americans. These achievement gaps are not, they may be a surprise to you, but they're not to those on the inside in the education community. These gaps are out there, and frankly, they're getting worse. There's good news coming. Low-income students in the 4th grade in Kansas are 3 years worth of learning behind in reading, behind the kids who are not low income. 4th grade, they're already 3 years worth of learning behind. And at the current pace, for them to catch up to the proficiency level of the kids who are not low income will take 80 years. And when they get there, when they catch up, they'll be 54% proficient. That's where the other kids are today. Low-income kids in the 8th grade. This is not news to anyone on the inside of the education community, and certainly not to media. Low-income kids in the 8th grade are 2.5 years worth of learning behind their peers in Kansas. And at the current pace, for them to get to the 48% proficiency level of their peers will take 240 years. 240 years. Now, this is all occurring against the backdrop of record-setting funding. We just learned yesterday, we got confirmation from the Department of Education, contrary to what you may have been told in the media, contrary to what you may have been told elsewhere, that in fact we set a 4th consecutive funding record in Kansas, topping $6 billion for the first time. That was the 4th consecutive record. And we topped $13,000 per student for the first time. That was the 3rd consecutive record. Over the last 10 years, we've seen a $2 billion funding increase in Kansas, and yet only 32% of our students are ready for college in English, reading, math, and science. The education community solution is, well, we just have to spend more and try harder. My friend Bob Lighton says that's like putting high-test gasoline in a poorly performing engine and expecting it to operate like a race car. You just have to fix the engine. That's not going to be easy. We know that. We're used to it. There's lots of institutional and political resistance, but there's good news. There is a real convergence of great opportunities that are happening right now. First of all, we have a new Commissioner of Education in Topeka, and let me read you a quote from him. "Maybe education needs to focus on the individual student and not the system. That is a radical change." Oh boy, is that a radical change. The business community is calling for change. The Commissioner of Education is calling for change. And it's all happening at the same time that legislators, for some of them, have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to develop a new school funding system that can drive the kinds of changes we need, like maybe actually funding students instead of institutions, like expanding the tax credit scholarship program that James talked about, like implementing real independent charter schools and providing opportunities through education savings accounts, maybe putting resources into instruction where it's actually going to do students the most good. And part of that has to be rewarding and attracting really effective teachers. We have to do what's going to make the fight to put students first is going to be intense, but we're ready for it. We fought, as James told you, we fought the unions and the education establishment to get the first tax credit scholarship program, Kansas' first school choice program. Thank you. Thank James and Pastor Moore. A lot of legislators credit Kansas Policy Institute with changing the Supreme Court's mind on school finance. Gone are the days where it's all about just how much you spend. It's actually about outcomes first. And when you look at spending, all of it has to count. Not a tiny little piece, all of the funding has to count. And it abandoned the old cost system that was used to develop the former system that caused us to increase so much spending. We helped eliminate that dysfunctional school funding system so that legislators and all of us now have the opportunity to put a system together that's actually going to work for students. Now, it's sadly ironic, while all this is going on, that people think that those of us who believe in the constitutional principles of personal and economic freedom are greedy. That's all we care about. We're the ones that are actually saying, let's put students first. And what that tells me is we need a deeper understanding of what it is to be conservative, to understand the principles of personal freedom.